It's something I've been thinking about for a while, so I have too much time to think, really. Uh, with all the technology and all that, things that are going on, have been going on, uh, shouldn't life be easier? Isn't that what that was all about? Technology, automation, and all that. It occurs to me, and I think that's why there's this weird sort of moral, if you want to call it that, programming with a lot of people, especially lean conservative, to where it's just like you're supposed to work. It's kind of the same thing that they've done with marriage. They've sort of built off from like a religious, because that's somewhere where it comes from as far as the work goes, Genesis and all that. They built off from sort of a religious standpoint on into kind of a hybrid government sort of thing, rule book sort of thing. And that's what they've done with marriage, because marriage, the word is nothing but joining. Like you put Ovaltine and milk together, you have married the two of those items. It's just a joining. That's all it is. And for a long time they had this talk about they called it fornication. If somebody had premarital sex or something like that, which is not accurate. That's not what that is. But you could argue, well, we dedicate ourselves to each other. We had ourselves married. We did that ourselves. And that wouldn't fly with them. It probably wouldn't fly with them if they just went to a preacher and did it. See, they've got it. A lot of people that think they're going by religion or going by some code that predates modern government, they're not. It's actually a government thing. Because the only way they would accept a marriage is if it is a government thing. In fact, that's where the debate is right now. Because you can go and anybody can go get married if they find someone who can marry them, or you can just join together and call yourselves married. It's the documentation, it's the government part of it that is the struggle. And that's the same thing that's going on with work, believe it or not. Because, somebody can work. A good example, a stay-at-home parent. And a lot of times this is like a housewife or a stay-at-home mother. People look at that like it's not a job. Because see, it's not an official job. It's not government. It's not got this structure to it. And they look at it that way. And of course, there are some lazy people and people don't do what they need to do and all that. But at the same time, done right, that is absolutely a job. But there's probably some sort of biblical interpretation to where there's this sort of merger from religion to statism, and then statism sort of becomes a religion, and that's sort of what's happening now. Because if you think about it, none of this makes any sense. I mean, why are people working at so many hours now? I don't even know if there's a way of looking this up. But I can verify in my life, I'm 43. In my life, people are working in my work career, which you would go back to, say, 16, just an example. So 27 years. In a course of 27 years, and of course I had some experience before then, seeing how my mother had to work and other people's parents were having to work. So you got, about 30 years. I haven't seen people working like this. And it's something, you may not even know about it. Because it's jobs that don't really get a lot of, nobody thinks about these factory workers. Nobody thinks about this. You don't really see that on movies and TV shows, do you? I mean, name a movie or a TV show where any of the characters work in factories. They just don't. They don't want to talk about that. Nobody wants to really know about it. So it occurs to me, part of the point of this video, is we're in a situation, it just shows you how sick the people who are running things are. Because going by all this technology and all the money and all the modernization, automation, all that, we don't have to work like this. Matter of fact, we don't have to work at all. Why should we? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, they manufacture more nonsense that people have to. It's like I've criticized a lot of these jobs shouldn't even exist. So you have to manufacture poor people to work these jobs that shouldn't exist. Like the world doesn't need McDonald's, Burger King, places like that. They don't need it. A lot of these factories, they don't need it. Now, you could say a lot of these factories could still exist, but they'd be making different parts that make more sense. Keep having to pause it because the stuff going on with my eyes. I have issues like that when I first get up. Anyway, even people, right-wing people like Musk, have floated the idea of like a universal basic income. But the funny thing is, the reason why something like that has to exist, even that's a distraction. The reason why something like that has to exist is because of how screwed up the situation is in the first place. Why does anybody need constant income? Is anybody thinking about this? You gotta have constant income because money's been constantly taken out of you. And it's not a matter of things that are your choice. Because as I've pitched it before, you can be completely self-sufficient, 100%. And, let's say you do still drive a car. We got to get gas, so there is that. And, chemicals that go with a car. Things like that to keep the car going. But they hit you with this mandatory auto insurance. Okay, well, let's say you bypass that. You get rid of all you don't even have to get gas anymore. You manufacture your own electricity. Let's say you make yourself an electric car, which is more doable than you think it is. They're still going to need to buy a few things, but you can charge it up. Again, they're still going to hit you with that mandatory auto insurance. Okay, well, let's just say you find another way, some sort of vehicle sort of way to get back and forth besides walking. So you get rid of all that. Then they're going to be after you for land taxes. And that's as if you've even managed to get that far into this without them arresting you for not producing. It's crazy that that's set up. They have to pump money back into a situation that they have made run on money. And what it is it's the terror, the fear. If things are like they should be. Everybody has a claim on the planet. Not everybody should be paying land taxes. You can make an argument that nobody should, but certainly people who are just living on their own little spot shouldn't be paying land taxes. And especially after X amount of years. You should have been able to pay that up. Why are so many bills unpayable? That's another thing. If you're going to argue that somebody needs mandatory auto insurance, why can it never be paid off? Why is it forever? That doesn't make any sense. You can mess around and pay more on that than you have on a house. I'll tell you what bothers them. They've been able to sit around and think about this stuff. This is the wealthy, the elite. Because they have to have all these things for them to sort of cover up the fact that they're hollow on the inside. They're empty. That they're not happy. Because in a manner of speaking, jokes aside, it won't really make you happy. You can't buy happiness. You can buy an easier life, which, in theory, could make it easier to be happy. Certainly poverty will not get you happiness. Makes it harder to be happy. But wealth doesn't guarantee that you'll be happy. And especially if you're these type of people, they'll never be happy. Never. They're not the type of people who can be happy. They're not like us. They're not human. And that's what bothers them. They can't stand the notion that they've done all this scheming and this and that and stuff that really has lost their soul in the process. They can't stand the idea that we could be just completely as comfortable as they want to be with nothing. They can't stand that. They'd rather see us dead. Because we could be right now. They could just be like, well, I got all the money I need. It's still making money. You know, I'll just cut y'all loose. But the situation that's set up won't allow that. It doesn't make sense that in the modern age, people working as many as, like there's one job I turned down that was working as many as 10 12s in a row. 10 12s. I want you to think about what that means. Because these places are also, I don't know about that one specifically, but all these places are so stingy, they won't pay you for lunch. That's why the old 9 to 5 thing won't hold up anymore. 9 to 5, that's 8 hours, which means they pay for your lunch. So the most common bracket of work at all time is dead. It wouldn't be 9 to 5, it'd be 9 to 5:30. You only get the 30-minute lunch too. Probably don't even get the other breaks. But, so 12 hours is not 12 hours. More than likely, they're going to make you work a little bit more because there's going to be a lunch in there. And 12 hours is going to be a lot of breaks. Legally. Otherwise, they wouldn't. So you got that. And you got the preparation to get there. You know, 20, 30 minutes one way if you're not right next to the factory. So that's another hour. I mean, they make it where we grew up learning how many hours you need to sleep to be healthy. And then these factories are allowed to work you in such a way that you cannot possibly get that amount of sleep. How is this happening? How is this allowed to happen? How is it still allowed to happen? So you got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Why? And it's just what I see is the whole system is there to manufacture debt and need. Debt, need, and wants. And fear. Because you got all this money. You look at GDP and all that. It's just going up and up and up and up and up. And people can afford less. That doesn't really correspond. You know what I mean? How does that synchronize? You know, it's like they just about any president will get in and tell you that, income is up. I'm sure this one is too. People are making more than they made such and such. Are they though? Because I can remember milk and gas being between 80 cents and $1 a gallon. I mean, rudimentary math tells you that people are making less. That's just, 2 items. So you figure minimum wage, federal minimum wage was $5.15 at the time. So even if I round that up to $1, let's see. Well, that makes it easy math. So you got to figure for every hour that you worked, you get 5 gallons of gas. You get 5 gallons of milk. I can't remember. I think I know in my lifetime I've seen evaporated milk for 25 cents a can. I believe I've seen bread for 25 cents a loaf. That's in my lifetime. You think I was 100 years old talking like this. I guarantee you prices when I was a young adult to a teenager are more comparable to what they were in the 60s and the 50s than what they are comparable to what they are now. And that's been less time. So you figure if you're going to get 5 gallons of gas, I mean, what is it right now? It's been, of course, it's been more. Take a quick look at where I am. And this is if you can run on regular, and a lot of these new cars can't. Okay, there's one right there, 360. So you need to be making $18 an hour. Minimum wage is $7.25. And you have these people arguing, do you know anybody that makes that much? Well, here's the issue with that. Something that occurred to me some years back. They tax you as though you're more well off than what you are. So, for example, since $7.25 is minimum wage and $18 is so much more than that, they tax you. They hit you harder in taxes. And believe me, I get screwed by taxes every single year. It's bad. Most years I pay more to have my taxes done than I get back. That's the truth. So you figure $18 an hour. So I've argued at the very least people need about 15. But if you crunch the numbers, it won't add up. And there's still people. I had somebody argue with me. I'm not going to try to look it up. I'll just paraphrase. I was a single mother, and I was raising kids on minimum wage, and I might have to look it up because this was obviously hogwash. It's not real. But you have to see this, and I'll pause here. Okay, it was a debate about minimum wage. We got this weird troll on one of the Morristown groups. And you'd be shocked how many people have got some more modern, decent ideas in this area. The ones that don't are quite suspicious. He posts this, he loves posting these weird memes here. You got this old guy mechanic talking to this young guy. And he's saying minimum wage was meant for teenagers. It wasn't meant to support a family or a four. Get a trade, get your hands dirty, and earn your way up the ladder. That's not how that works. That sounds great on a book. Here's the reality of that. I mean, automatically. My question is explain why minimum wage jobs exist during school hours. So if it's for teenagers, and there's even minimum wage being paid, there has been in the past, for when teenagers are supposed to be, there's like a curfew, you know? So, this other guy like to jump in here. It's for retirees also, not to support a family. Okay, so we had to add another character in there. Okay, so we either have teenagers who are living at home or people who shouldn't have to work at all. You retire, so you built a function and a job. As a person who owns a company, you built in a function, a job, where you have to have either teenagers or people who cannot retire, or it can't exist. And I gotta get through this comment here because this video is getting too long. But you get all the laugh reacts, of course. Doesn't hold up. Here we go. These jobs are considered entry-level positions. It's to give anybody a place to start in the working world. They are jobs that are easy to learn and prepare you for better, higher-level positions. Okay, but how do you live until that point? But anyway, let's get to our main one. I was a single mom, so we're talking about some years back. We're not talking about now. I was a single mom after my divorce for 20 years, raising my kids on minimum wage until I could get training for a better job. So already we're talking about a different time period. Until I get training for a better job. I realize it is difficult, but it can be done. It means cutting a lot of corners and doing without. Here's the thing. She's also getting government help. And I've worked with people who have kids. You get quite a bit of a tax cut. You don't get taxed like I get taxed. When my kids left for college, how do they afford college? See, here's how you can tell a real poor person from one that's not. Let's say the college itself got paid for. Cool, that's out of the way. Some reason it's free college for them. How do you live from day to day? That doesn't hold up. See, the reason why I couldn't ever do that is because you need constant money. Because if you're poor, you're constantly trying to build and rebuild. You can't you can't go to school because you constantly need income. When my kids left for college, I was still wearing maternity bras. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything. I think half of the problem that people are having is that they want to have too many professions. I am now retired and living on $2,000 a month. That is a lot of retirement. Tell you from experience, that is a lot of retirement. It might not be for you. I don't know who's watching this and from where, but that's a pretty good bit of retirement. There's some lies in here somewhere. She was making minimum wage and now she's on $2,000 a month retired. Where did that come from? You don't work rinky-dink jobs and then have that amount of money. See, here's the issue with that. I'm just going to Facebook's going to reset this. $2,000 a month times 12, 24,000, divided by 52, 461, divided by 40. She's making $11.50 an hour being retired, you could say. So it's the same thing as making $11.50 an hour working 40 hours a week. How's she making more as retired than she did what she's claiming? That don't hold up. She's leaving some stuff out somewhere. I feel like if people can afford a $900 phone, then they can probably cut corners somewhere. Most people aren't. People have gotten too used to buying $200 shoes. Work shoes cost a lot. I don't know if you know that. $75 pair of shorts. I don't know what you're talking about there. $100 shirts. Who's doing that? So my response was, no, it cannot be done. You're leaving out a lot of details as well. We can crunch the numbers right here if you'd like. Minimum wage would be $290 gross per week, and that's for now. I believe she's talking about before. $290 per week, $1,580 a year gross, $1,256 per month gross. Now you show me how that covers expenses in detail. It doesn't. She's lying. She's omitting a whole lot of things. She may have had the housing covered. She may have been from a state that had higher minimum wage. She might have been talking about when minimum wage was less and things were more affordable. A lot of conservatives want to draw a connection between those two things. You raise minimum wage, other things will go up as well. They've gone up without minimum wage, so both is true. But that's just the type of lies and delusions that you get on this. The bottom line is, with what's going on right now, we should be able to sit around and enjoy ourselves. And the reason we're not is because the people who are in charge hate people. They hate people. You realize they require all this to pretend all this wealth to sort of try to cover up how hollow they are, to try to imitate happiness. If they can look over and see people not having to work and just laughing and enjoying themselves on less, it pisses them off. They hate that. They absolutely hate that. They hate that notion. And when they realize they have no power over that person, they hate that as well, because that's what wealth is. That's what they want. Now, me and you, we may want money so we can pay off our bills and we can sit back and relax, get a few things that we like, but just enjoy our lives. Spend time with our loved ones. Go and see the country. Go and see the world. Not to interfere or bother anybody. That's not what they want, because they're not like us. They want servants. They want people that they can force to do all kinds of things. And they can't do that if people are financially secure. And to manufacture more of them, to sort of reproduce in a manner of speaking, you have to make BS businesses that shouldn't exist, like fast food, which is what it's sort of become. You have to have these nonsense businesses that shouldn't exist. Look at all the insurance companies. You got temporary agencies. All these companies, these things that should not exist. And people up above them are wealthy because these companies exist, and then people are forced to deal with them. So you got a company that shouldn't exist, that the heads of it are wealthy. Meanwhile, it shouldn't exist in the first place. It's crazy how that happens. You can make any nonsense business and plop it down somewhere and offer to, I mean, it could be somebody make a factory where people are popping bubble wrap. And as people be like, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard in my life, that this is a company. But if you set it down somewhere where people absolutely need income, they're poor, and you offer a few dollars an hour, and you're able to turn some sort of profit on that, you can be a wealthy person over something that doesn't contribute at all. Just a few things to think about. I definitely need people to think about how we're working more than we've ever had, and things are more expensive than they've ever been. And it shouldn't be. It should be the other way. Why is it like that? You need to ask yourself. Why in this modern age are we working more and are things more expensive? Definitely marinate on those ideas.